Hey guys, how are you all doing? Lately, I've been seeing a bunch of videos that are kind of like titled or themed around, like, here's the builds I'm taking into Shadow of the Erdtree. Or, like, at the end of a video, content creator will be like, what build are you taking into Shadow of the Erdtree? And to generally answer that question for this channel, it's all of them. Like, I'm taking all of the builds on my current roster, and I'm taking them all to the, was it the Shadowlands? What are we calling it? I'll learn this once the Shadow of the Erdtree actually drops. But yeah, I'm taking all my builds there. There's gonna be a weapon or a piece of armor or a talisman or whatever that will really fit one of my builds, and I'm gonna go get it. I remember when I was making builds at the end of Dark Souls 3, almost none of the characters I was making didn't have something from either Ashes of Ariandel or the Ring City. So I think the likelihood that, like, of the 10 builds I currently keep, I think they'll pretty much all have something that they'll want in the DLC. But the thing is, Miyazaki has warned us that in order, I guess not warned us isn't quite the right word, but Miyazaki has pretty much said, hey, in order to get to the DLC, you're gonna have to beat Mohg and Rendan. And Rendan is fairly easy. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't really like the Rendan boss fight in general. There's nothing about it that I feel is like particularly great or fun, other than like the cinematic quality of him descending down as a meteor. The OST is also very good. But anyways, not the biggest fan of that fight, but it's easy enough to solo. Mohg, on the other hand, is much more difficult, and also probably not my favorite fight in the game, but it's definitely like top 3, and it definitely has one of my favorites, like, OSTs in the game as well, for both phase 1 and 2. Anyways, I love fighting Mohg at like lower rune levels with multiple people, because if you don't know this already, as you summon more players into like a multiplayer session, the bosses and enemies get harder in the level. Bosses especially. Bosses will gain more health, more resistances. They'll even gain more posture, so they'll be harder to posture break. So it turns Mohg, who's like a pretty difficult boss, into like a borderline raid boss if you fight him with multiple underleveled players. So the other night I went through and tallied it up, and I had 7 mid-level characters. And mid-level is a really broad range for me. I consider that anywhere from like 40 to about like 100. So I have characters from like 32 to 94. And I have about 7 of those. And I realized that I had done all these like rune level 60 runs of Mohg with a bunch of other folks, and then deleted those characters because I just stopped playing with them. And in the meantime, I've made a bunch of new characters that I just haven't really beaten a lot of like higher level bosses on because they're like mid-level characters. So I had 7 mid-level characters that I needed to beat Mohg on. Now, usually I just wouldn't have the time to do any of this, but it was actually a 3-day weekend for us Americans. And I dubbed Memorial Day to be Memohgrial Day, and I just decided to start at 94 and work my way down to lower levels. Kind of get acclimated to the fight, or what I remember about the fight. And then as I would beat Mohg with like higher level characters, I'd work my way down, and then I think I finally just said I wasn't going to do the rune level 32 build because, well, it's wearing double source heals, and it's just kind of this like absurdly goofy build within itself that is pretty unserious. Like its main feature is that it casts big bubble. I made a whole video about it. It was just going to be borderline impossible to do with like multiple people, and I just didn't want to waste everyone's time while I got consistently one-shot by every single one of Mohg's attacks. But that still leaves me with 6 mid-level characters that me and a couple folks from my Discord got together and fought on Memohgrial Day. And this is kind of the compilation of all of those attempts.
sting.
Oh fuck, I forgot to eat the tear. Oh yeah. Forgot about that too.
Is mine and mine alone.
Forgot about the tear. Oh no! No! I'm out too.
I gotta say, it's a lot harder to manage the blood flame patterns.
As clear as day. The coming of our dynasty. Morgwin.
Oh, photo.
Yeah, easy. This is easy. I did it. Oh, you there?
Yeah!
Hey,
I yoinked.
put me on, coach. Put me on. Don't fuck it down. Is that for a quote? All Europe.
I don't want to post it.
Yeah. he just took it out of you. I saw that as I was going out. Yeah, fuck you.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that was a perfect like phase one. We almost killed them there as well. Yeah,
Oh my god.
Is mine.
that's that was like 900. I am not surviving.
Oh my god. Stuck in
Yeah,
asshole.
I am not surviving.
I still believe.
Oh, you. 7. God damn.
Oh, I told you.
Yeah.
Is mine and
Holy shit. What the fuck happened?
God damn, we got. Good luck. Something like that. Yeah. Fuck you in the fucking. Yes.
Wait, how did I something damage do that?
mine alone.
Okay, I'm gonna have to review the tape. I still. Fuck you. Yes.
God damn it.
Get that.
One more. Perfect. Perfect. Mohg is such a great boss. Mohg is such a great boss. Like, taking up aggro and like. Yeah, I'm gonna check out real soon. I like that. Bring your faith, lover. Use your end of this room. Not it's gonna be good, but it's fun on its own.
Yeah. Oh, Claymore's
Ma-
different. We paid
Okay.
gaming?
Yeah, we are all paid
Wait,
gaming.
let me
We're all,
remember.
and we've Is this the lore? We're going. Oh yeah.
I'm just gonna step aside for a second and fire rock. It's totally safe.
And
Wait, what? Oh.
Robo, back down, Robo. Robo. Kill.
No!
Fuck. Come on. Robo, don't get.
Die, Robo.
It must happen.
Give him. Please.
Yes.
Yes!
Oh.
Robo, on my screen, Robo, you had like 5% of your health left. I did not know if your health was gone for the roll.
Why do I still have the spears on me?
GG.
Circle moment.
Circle moment.
Wanted to take a brief moment before this last section to chat about fighting Mohg at rune level 40. So Mohg at 40 with 3 other summons essentially stops being a regular fight and turns into a raid boss, since he can practically one-shot us at a moment's notice, and we simply don't do enough damage through normal means of smacking him with weapons. That kind of forces us to resort to other means of making him susceptible to damage in other less conventional ways, and we did that by kind of forming roles on our team. Iroth became the aggro draw and dodge tank, while also applying frost with his weapons, causing Mohg to take about 10% more damage. Errol then applied poison and rot at the same time, providing us with a long-term damage over time solution. And I meanwhile used several different weapons to apply debuff status effects, which is kind of the whole point of this build that I'll touch upon later. Essentially, I soft swap between the Sword of Milos, which applies a 15% damage debuff to enemies and myself, then would swap off of that, which would take the debuff off me but leave it on the enemies. I'd also then apply the Black Knife, which takes off a significant chunk of Mohg's total health bar in general, but would also apply a health drain effect, and then I would also swap to the Gargoyle's Black Blade and use the Ash of War to apply another health drain effect. Having dedicated roles in order to properly do this fight was actually kind of a blast, and even though we had already done this fight like 15 times already that day, this still added another element to it to make it a great experience. I would highly recommend trying Mohg with 3 people at around rune level 40 or rune level 60. It's such a good time. I'm also kind of looking forward to doing the same thing with some of the bosses in the DLC, if the rewards would end up being worthwhile for lower level characters.
Oh, this is close.
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very honorable. Time to go to 30.
Does anyone else need Mohg killed?
So that was Memohgrial Day, and now we're pretty much all set up to access the DLC on all of my mid-level characters. I have several other high-level characters that I'm excited about using in the DLC. I just haven't made videos about them because I just don't find build making particularly interesting past rune level 125. At rune level 150 and above, what even is a build at that point? I really love making mid-level builds because you have to make these concessions and sacrifices when putting together a build, and it becomes this puzzle where you have to find a niche of what makes that build good while also trying to cover your bases on what your weaknesses are. At rune level 150, you have so many stats that you can be a mage with 60 plus int, and also have 60 vigor, and also have enough mind to cast Comet 12 times in a row, and also have enough endurance to wear armor that lets you hit all the poised breakpoints. Like, builds at that level are just all upside, no downsides, and it's kind of boring to me at least. And like, why are we even at this level? I know all you're going to do is cast Comet at me every time I come close to you. I know you're just going to press L2 with an unapproachable weapon. So like, why did we come to this level? To cast Elden Stars? Fuck off. Okay, actually I just watched a video of Sir Grey Fox using Elden Stars, and I'm actually kind of inspired now. I might come back around to using Elden Stars at some point. We'll see. We'll see. Anyways, let's talk about that last build in the Mohg compilation, the rune level 41. So way back when I started this channel, the first build I showcased on it was Judicator Aiden, who's this absolute Way of White zealot, like a wannabe dragon slayer in an age where there were no more dragons to slay. Back in Dark Souls 3, the actually good faith scaling infusion for weapons was the lightning infusion, whereas in Elden Ring, lightning scales with dexterity for some reason. That one still doesn't make any sense to me in the slightest, but it is what it is at this point. It's been 2 years. But in any case, I made this reincarnated version of Aiden as a low-level dex and faith build at rune level 40. I kept the lightning claymore, and I offhanded Vike's spear, which is actually about as honest as Vike's spear is going to get. We'll talk more about the nuances of Vike's spear and my moral quandaries with it in a bit. But the offhand Great Spear and main hand thrusting Greatsword is an extremely fun combination in my opinion. Essentially, this setup lends itself quite well to several different combos that I really like using against multiple people. Some of my favorites are jumping Greatsword R1s into offhand Lance roll catches, or following up Claymore thrusting R2s with offhand Lance R1s that have some substantial hyper armor. One of my favorite pairings that I don't get around to quite enough is offhand Lance and main hand ornamental straight swords, as when buffed, those R2s still have their power stance attacks available. And from what we've seen of the DLC so far, there seem to be a few paired weapons, like the ornamental straight swords, so I'm really happy those are making a return in the DLC. I mean, I really liked paired weapons in Dark Souls 3. I thought that was a much better system than power stancing, so I'm glad they're bringing some aspect of that back in the DLC. The overall theme of this build is somewhere between a Fallen Knight and almost like a Witch Doctor of sorts. Aiden uses all of these strange trinkets and fetishes from his long career that help him scrape by in fights. Like I used the Sword of Milos to apply that debuff to my opponents that I was applying to Mohg in the Memohgrial Day segment. One note about the Shriek of Milos: while it only applies a 5% debuff to all PvP damage, it in fact still is about 10% in PvE, so if you have PvE support, they will all do more damage than usual to your debuffed opponent. I also like to use the Spiral Horn shield in combination with the Speckled Hardtear in my Physic to make it very hard for overleveled players to bleed me out, or inflict any kind of status effect at all. Inadvertently, I created a little science experiment for myself where I invaded the same party twice. One where I applied all of my anti-bleed buffs and was not bled out even once by 2 Bloodhound Fangs, with one of them having Blood Flame Blade applied to it. And another where I didn't apply any of my anti-bleed buffs and died instantly to the exact same attacks. Hypothesis proven, anti-bleed buffs keep all of the blood inside your body most of the time. Alright, it's time for our philosophical study session. Let's open our books to the chapter titled Moral Justifications for Using Absolutely Busted Gear. Subtitle, A Time to Vikes. This particular build has access to some of the nastiest low-level gear, and we're going to detail some of that. The first is a classic, the Spark Aromatic Perfume. The Spark Aromatic has absurd base damage for low levels and has no stat requirements. This was a great idea from Software. It says it gets an A scaling in Dex, but it's kind of lying to you. That scaling is negligible at best. You can get the Spark Aromatic recipe by just making your way up to Altus Plateau and finding it in a chest that is guarded by an Omen Killer and a bunch of flowers, so it's quite easy to get your hands on. The Spark Aromatic ingredients are also quite easy to farm, as there are several squishy low-level Miranda flowers in the Weeping Peninsula for your Miranda powder. and Altus Bloom is literally just a flower that grows on the ground everywhere throughout the Altus Plateau. All of these things respawn too, so you can kind of build up a giant stockpile of perfume ingredients. You know what else you can find in the Weeping Peninsula? That's right, the Winged Scythe, which will take away your ability to heal if you even catch a whiff of that Ash of War. So if you use that thing on me, you will be getting a full-blown whiff and possibly also a huff of this gasoline-based perfume. It's one of those weapons that I'm like, yeah, I know you can get it early, but if you use it on me, I'm going to be nasty about it. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but I am mildly disturbed by the potential of DLC perfumes based on what they've shown so far, and I suspect the consequences could be devastating for low levels. Moving on. The second weapon that is currently banned on the Geneva Conventions of Invasions is the pulley crossbow with sleep bolts. I do not relish using this weapon as it's fairly dishonest, not because of the pulley crossbow part, but more because frequently using the sleep bolt setup requires save scumming or at the very least cheat engine in order to amass a proper armory of sleep bolts. That being said, this is a perfect counter to overleveled mages that will simply delete you at a moment's notice if given the chance. Sleep is especially effective against mages as it saps their FP for every sleep proc, in a way neutralizing them or at the very least draining their resources. For generally overleveled and dangerous players, I pair the last two find out options together. I sleep proc them and then douse them with perfume like an overly aggressive department store salesperson. As you can imagine, this is highly effective. I don't use this setup on hosts and honest phantoms, as what is the point of playing the game if you're just going to win every time with the same strategy? But I will make exceptions to this rule, obviously, as I do often see hosts using extremely dishonest gear at this level that was clearly dropped for them. At rune level 40, I have a zero tolerance policy for anyone wielding Helfen's Steeple, a weapon that's already quite powerful at high levels and that abso-fucking-lutely will kill you in 2 hits kinda powerful at low levels. Those folks in particular get the Joe Malone London true combo of codeine crossbow into fucking cypress and grapevine. I do also have the lightning crossbow bolts in my inventory. It's just pretty rare that I ever use them because crossbows in this game don't do real effective enough damage pretty much ever. I have exactly one clip where it was effective, and of course it was in the lake where lightning damage is going to be buffed significantly. And the last weapon on this list is the one given to us in Liurnia by a friendly invader, that of course being Fingerprint Vike, delivering us his spear at the Church of Inhibition. Now, I am not a big fan of Vike's spear for obvious reasons. Ghost hits, the concept of madness in general as a status effect in this game. It absolutely blows. But we must ask ourselves, much like Matthew McConaughey in the 1996 film, A Time to Kill, is there a time to Vikes? The answer is yes, and it's the same answer I've been repeating through this whole section. Look, sometimes I just want a normal-ass invasion with normal-ass people. I lose invasions all the goddamn time to normal-ass co-opers because I don't need to win every invasion in order to derive pleasure from my gaming experience. Hell, I really enjoyed getting absolutely bodied by this parry from his host. You deserve that one, my friend. But if I invade you and you're out here in Liurnia with your overleveled friend and a rune arc and the Taunter's Tongue on with the blue cipher ring on, my friend, that is a time for Vikes. It's a shame too because Vikes is kind of a fun weapon on its own. I absolutely love those R2s. Give me an infusible Vike spear without the madness and I will never stop R2ing with it. But sometimes it's a good thing that Vikes exist because I don't want to deal with your Dragon Breath Wind Whooshing Bootlicker Blue powered 3v1. Sometimes I just want you and all your buddies to let out that blood-curdling scream as you are scorched by a flame of literal hatred and madness. There's also the not-so-rare case of a vile, overleveled player with an unapproachable setup due to completely absurd latency, and my friend, that is also a time to Vikes. In case you weren't aware, hitting another player with something substantial while that player is in the madness animation will result in them going flying, which, as you might imagine, can be extremely useful. To wrap things up here, rune level 40 is a bit of a tricky level to build for in general. You have to squeeze a lot of points into not a lot of levels, which I like doing that, but it's really easy to stretch yourself way too thin trying to do something unique. And the biggest issue for me, at least, is the build disparity in your opponents. With a build trying to do too much, you kind of don't stand much of a chance against that Vit Gouge Bonfire Duelist who eats crab every 20 seconds on the dot and has 6,000 hours in Dark Souls 3. Because you're at rune level 40, you can invade up to rune level 55, and the blue matchmaking range is even broader than that. So often you can find yourself invading folks who are just playing at entirely different level brackets than you. But on the other hand, you also invade the honest co-opper parties who will get their entire HP bar wiped out by a gust of wind. Okay, maybe 3 gusts of wind, but you get my point. I think the only solution here is to aim for somewhere in the middle, where you have the ability to do good damage all the time, but also have the ability to do absurd amounts of damage at a moment's notice. For more on that, I'll send you over to Rendan's Bomb Logic video, which is a favorite of mine. But that's all from you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.